more 41 meters. Jeff Wade submitted 105.3. The fan personalities Jeff "Skin" Wade from left, producer Kevin Turner and Ben Rogers with Rangers outfielder Shin-Soo by Selby Lopez, staff writer at Lopez. Selby 31. Ben Rogers was working in TV advertising sales industry, making the most money in his life. It was a long journey for the former rapper from Richardson, but he missed using that creativity from his days in a hip-hop group. When he was offered his first full-time radio gig with his co-host Jeff "Skin" Wade, he knew the $100,000 pay cut would be a leap of faith. However, Rogers pursued the chance to live out his dream with the full support of his wife. Now, Rogers and Wade host The Ben. We caught up with Rogers recently to talk about his time in a hip-hop group, how he met Skin and his love for baseball. Here are some of the highlights. How did you and Jeff "Skin" Wade meet? Rogers: we met at Huffines Recreation Center in Richardson. We both loved basketball. We loved playing basketball, pickup basketball. Every day, after school or on weekends and especially during the summer, our day was based around going and playing basketball at Huffines. We went to different schools but we knew each other from moves. So we met, I think, going into 7th grade, and we didn't even start going to school together until 10th grade, but we knew each other very well from basketball. Jeff "Skin" Wade dishes on his hip-hop background, why he left ESPN radio and how he got his nickname. We would just go up there with our different groups. He would go up there with his buddies and I would go up there with my buddies, and we just got to know each other from playing basketball, but we didn't see each other outside of that, really. Skin always jokes about how our relationship went to the next level before we went into 10th grade. He said I called him to get a scouting report of the girls from his junior high that were going to be going to high school with us. He always laughs about that. I was using my networks of buddies I had met through sports to get scouting reports on girls, so I knew what the sophomore class was going to look like a little bit before anybody else. It was just finding out who the girls are, what they look like, if they're cool or whatever. I was getting scouting reports. Our junior high was a little more advanced than theirs. They were more conservative, we were kind of a little advanced for our age, so they weren't really thinking about things along those lines. We had a jump on them in that regard. You had a pretty successful career in TV ad sales. Why did you decide to switch into sports broadcasting? Rogers: Skins and mine, our stories are similar, but we are totally different as people. The best story that illustrates that to me and kind of tells about this adventure is we are in 10th grade and had the same geometry class, and the teacher was Mr. Gammons. I was probably the worst kid in the class and Skin was probably the best in terms of grade-wise, and he was kind of helping me along. I remember when we had a big test and he let me cheat off him on the tests, which was kind of funny. I was kind of lost. I was like, I don't know, he'd just kind of hold up his paper. Oh, okay, yeah, that was just like a really cool gesture. Then he got moved from the class to a more advanced class. So our senior year, they allowed us to miss as many days as we needed to of school as long they were excused absences. They tried it in our district for 1 year and they never did it again. G-Bag Nation General Gavin Dawson shares the show's origin story, why Herschel Walker's the perfect guest, and looks back at the Dale Hansen beef. Well, I found out who the person was for what document they were going to use to confirm signatures. So, I made sure that we all submitted whatever paperwork there was that they were going to use for signatures to our parents on our excuse notes. We forged those and then we forged 1 million of these notes. Over the course of the year, our senior year, we missed about 70 days of school. We would just go in first period and then skip second and third and then go to fourth and just do the opposite the next day, and they were all excused because we had notes. Basically, even that said, I graduated my senior year with an average of 70 on the nose. I barely got out. Skin graduated on the honor roll even though he missed 70 days. In terms of our opportunities that we had, I think he's just brilliant. He'll read something once and never forget it. I'm the exact opposite. So we failed as rappers. We had a rap group, we dropped out of college to pursue that. We got really close. We had an offer from a record label, we tried to start an independent record label. We went a long time without even really having to work a real job because we were just making hip-hop. Basically, when that failed, I was like, man, I've got to settle down, get a degree, get a real job, so I did that. Because of that, my growth was kind of stunted. I was 5 years behind other people that we grew up with that already had jobs, were making money. So when I got out of college, I got really fortunate and got hooked up in television advertising sales in my first job. I started doing really well, but I was super hungry because I saw people around me making money and I had been broke for so long, over a decade. When I first started, I was really hungry in sales and I did really well. So I rapidly moved up in sales and pretty soon I was one of the top ad sales execs in town for selling television advertising. It became very lucrative. I didn't have kids, so I was making terrible decisions with money early on. Oh my god, I had a shark aquarium, which was like a saltwater aquarium with a shark in it. It was so stupid. It was just like having a fireplace burning money at all times. I was just making dumb decisions like that and then I eventually got married. My wife, we dated for 10 years, been married for 15. By this time we had 2 kids in diapers. I was making really good money, but I was also missing that creativity from being in the hip-hop group. I was missing doing something really fun and creative and I was confined to a cubicle. I can remember the day we got our first full-time offer. I had to go to my wife and I was like, honey, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I've got an opportunity to chase my dream and work in radio full-time. She was like, what's the bad news? I said, I think it's going to be a $100,000 pay cut. So at this point, 2 kids in diapers, $100,000 pay cut, and she looked right at me and she said, go for it. Let's do it. It was very scary, but I knew that I wanted to do something fun and I believed in myself and Skin. I thought we had something special. I thought, what the hell? If this doesn't work, I can always go back to doing sales. So I kind of just rolled the dice and it was scary and painful along the way and it definitely wasn't a smart move financially, but it ended up being, I think, the right thing to do. Do you get to express that creativity through making jingles and songs for the Ben? This is crazy, but I think I got more value out of trying to make it as a rapper than I have gotten out of my college degree. Because the ability to freestyle, come up with stuff that rhymes on an impromptu basis. If you can do that, it's easy to think on your feet and not rhyme. Get to know local radio host Jean-Jacques Taylor, including time he rode Jerry Jones' limo, fight with Dez in terms of the creativity. That's one of the ways we kind of kicked down the door to get in the industry as we found out that Mark Friedman, who was producing Norm's Hitskes show at the Ticket. We found out that he went to our high school, Berkner in Richardson. I think making a rap intro for Norm has really helped us wedge our foot in the door. I still hear promos every once in a while where they use some of the lyrics from the Norm song. One of the lines was, he doesn't come to laugh when he covers the draft because he's an old school true pioneer of the craft. We still use hip-hop to wedge our foot in the door and kind of making all the intro songs over years has been a way to feed the creativity that I miss from making music. We have a million different intro songs for all these different people. Some of them are really slick and well produced and it's a lot of fun to make. I think that's a way to kind of use this skill that we have and differentiate ourselves from the conversation a little bit and also have some fun along the way. What is the coffee nods? Rogers, so the coffee nods. At this point I had kids, rap career is over, I have a sales job, I have the radio job, going simultaneously. One of the hard things, when you're trying to make it as a struggling, failing rapper, is you're always broke, you can't really afford to do anything. So when I finally started making money in advertising sales, I thought, okay, what the heck? At some point, I'm going to have to explain to my kids why it took me 10 years to graduate from college, and I have to tell them that I was a rapper, but I don't really have any music to represent the work that we put in. I thought, what the heck? I'm just going to kind of come up with a project. I'm not really going to shop it or try to get a record deal, but I'm going to make it for myself. So I went and bought all these beats, and a buddy of mine helped me put it together. He's a friend of mine and Skin's. His name is Jason Ferrantello. We call him DJ Theory. Me and DJ Theory set out to make this project, the Coffee Nods. I recorded I think, like, 20 songs, and I went all out, man. I bought beats, I had buddies jump on and do verses here and there, Skin produced some of the beats on it, and man, I went all out. I spent a lot of money on it. I think I figured at the time, I spent about $40,000 on making this album, probably $30,000, but it took about 3 years to make. It just kind of became a hobby. It ended up being a fun little project. In Pulp Fiction, there's a moment where the wolf, Winston Wolf, comes to clean up a situation that someone has actually been shot in the back of a car. So someone was actually murdered, but he comes over, it's a total crisis, everyone's panicking. The first thing he does is ask for a cup of coffee, and in the middle of it, they hand him the coffee and he smiles at the guy who made it and just nods his head. That's the international language of "that's good coffee," so the Coffee Nods is supposed to be the international nod of "that's good hip-hop," like you hear it and it's the same reaction as Winston Wolf drinking that coffee. It's like, okay, that's pretty good. So that's why it's called the Coffee Nods. Did you and Skin have rap names back in the day? Rogers, not really. The rap that really resonated with me the most was the La Soul, A Tribe Called Quest, a lot of the East Coast stuff. The whole point of it was just that if it's real and authentic, then it's good. We never tried to be anything we weren't. If you listen to the Coffee Nods, I'm rapping about having good credit, I'm rapping about some of the terrible jobs I've had. We never really tried to be anything we weren't. Skin already had a wacky nickname in Skin, so we never changed that. This one guy in a local rap group would call me Benizana, like Benihana, but Benizana. I was like, what is that? He was like, Benihana because you're slicing up the rhymes or you're cutting it up. Instead of Benihana, it's Benizana because you're always sweating. Benizana is still my PS4 ID. It's kind of a nickname, really. But we never changed our names. It was just Big Ben. Between you and Skin, who's the better rapper? Rogers, really, when we were doing it for the most part, he produced the beats. He was producing beats, and then when we were in a group together, I think it was me rapping probably 80% of the time. He didn't rap all that much, but he's really good. In fact, I would say he's better than me. He's just so smart and so aware of everything that's ever happened. Like I said, if he reads a book, he never forgets it. He hears a piece of music, he never forgets it. I think he was better than me at rapping, but for the most part he just made the beats and I rapped most of the time. I heard you coach your kids' youth sports teams. Does it ever get intense for you? Rogers, I have coached a ton and I love it. When I was growing up, my dad coached all of our teams and youth sports teams. My dad passed away in 2005, and when he died, it was amazing because the things that we talked about, my brothers and I, that we valued the most about my dad, we all talked about how great it was to have him coaching our teams. So I thought, you know what, I'm definitely going to do that for my kids. I want to help coach, I want to be around, the tickets Norm Hitzka's dishes on pioneering sports radio, his weirdest guests, and Don Nelson's awkward on-air moments, so I have done that a lot. My boys are now 12 and 10, so they're at that age where they're starting to play sports at a higher level, and daddy ball is not really an option. Dads move to the sideline and professional coaches take over. My job's just to be supportive over on the sideline, so to speak. I have a deep passion for youth sports in general. Over the course of this process, watching my kids grow and play more sports, I've actually been trying to start a side company. The point of the company is to help teach parents how to not be expletive at their kids' youth sporting events. You just run across it so much where parents have these unreasonable expectations, or they're just blowhards, or they're just incredibly negative with their own kids, and it pushes these kids away from playing youth sports. I've had this thing on the back burner, this little company I've been trying to get off the ground. If I ever do, I think it could really do some good, because I think parents have unreasonable expectations and kind of make a lot of mistakes, me included, at youth sporting events. How did you grow such a love for baseball? Rogers: when I was a kid, I loved baseball. For whatever reason, my parents have pictures of me when I was 3 and 4, and I would get up every day and I'd try to wear the same clothes every day basically. It was a Jeff Burroughs light blue Rangers jersey that must have been given away at some t-shirt day at the old Arlington Stadium. I'd wear that and some kind of light blue pants that I had, and I'd go to take my brother's cleats and I'd go put them on, and every day I would get dressed up to go play baseball. My mom thought it was hilarious, and she would go, "Where are you going?" The elementary school that I eventually would go to was called Dartmouth, so I told my mom that I was on the baseball team. She goes, "Oh, really? What's the name of the team?" And I'd go, "The Dartmouth Weasels." For whatever reason, I named my imaginary team the Weasels. So every day, I would get in baseball gear and go pretend to play. I guess I'd get a wiffle ball bat and then I'd go pretend that I was playing baseball. Since a very young age, I just was attracted to baseball, and Dad was really into baseball. So even though we really butted heads a lot, with me being the black sheep of the family, we always bonded over Texas Rangers baseball. We would sit down and watch Rangers games together, talk about it, and then go talk about baseball away from watching the games, and it was this special baseball bond that we had. I guess you could kind of say we grew up in a baseball family. That's kind of the sport we all gravitated towards. I mean, I played football some and I played basketball some, but baseball was always the true love of my life in terms of sports. Whether it's wiffle ball or youth baseball, or we used to play wiffle ball in the pool, we called it PABL, Professional Aquatic Baseball League. For Skin, his dad was a basketball coach, so I think that's why he gravitated towards basketball. For me, it was just baseball was my dad's true love in terms of sports, and so it kind of became mine as well. You've been getting some heat for not including The Sandlot in your top 5 baseball movies. Why is it not in the top 5 for you? Rogers: I hear so much talk about The Sandlot being the greatest baseball movie ever, and I just think it's overrated. But I do think it's a good movie. In terms of a family-friendly, charming movie you can sit down and watch with your whole family, man, there's few better. But I would never put that ahead of The Natural, or Field of Dreams, or Bull Durham. I just kind of butted into a conversation with Amanda Guerra and Brian Broaddus that I didn't need to butt into at all, but for whatever reason I jump in and say, "Hey, it's okay, Broaddus. Sandlot's a little bit overrated." Oh my god. The Sandlot mob is one of the angriest mobs. Ultimately what I said was, I've got The Sandlot as the 6th best baseball movie, but people were ready to storm the castle and burn my house down over that. So yeah, it elicited some pretty strong reactions from folks. The reason I wouldn't say it's as good as The Natural, or Field of Dreams, is because for me, that movie didn't hit me at the right time. That's a movie that was made for 12-year-olds when I was 23. When it came out in theaters, it didn't resonate with me because it was 12-year-old sensibilities as the main target market. I wasn't looking for family-friendly movies at 23, I was joking about this. Instead of saying, "You're killing me, Smalls," I was saying, "You're killing it, Biggie Smalls." I was into hip-hop. Then later on in life, sure, when I watched it with my kids, I thought, man, this is really cool. It's a good family-friendly movie. It doesn't resonate to me like The Natural or Field of Dreams because those stories to me fit the raw emotion of the father-son bond of baseball. Having a catch with your dad who's been dead. He was a ghost, your dad's having a catch with you. That's moving to me. In Field of Dreams, The Natural, Robert Redford playing catch with his son at the end after all he's been through. Those are the things that are the more powerful attachments that resonate with me as opposed to, hey, look, this dog slobbers on balls. It's like, okay, I get how that's cool, but I'm not going to put it ahead of these emotional masterpieces. So for me, it's an easy discussion to have. I just didn't mean to anger so many people by not having it in my top 5. Now after seeing the reaction, I think that proves my point that it is overrated. If people are willing to have a fist fight over not being in my top 5, then maybe people are overrating it a touch. I don't know why y'all are upset with me. I didn't trash The Sandlot. I just said it wasn't in my top 5 baseball movies. I like it just fine. But at Rotten Tomatoes top critics, on the other hand, have it scored at just 42%. They call it shamelessly derivative and overly nostalgic. pic.twitter.com/500bitch5sci. Ben Rogers, at Ben Rogers, July 5, 2018. How did you get into Fortnite? Rogers, this is kind of embarrassing. My sons, they're 12 and 10, they started getting into Fortnite. They're playing and talking about it. Playing it, talking about it. Then we start hearing at youth sporting events, we can't get our kids to stop playing Fortnite. Finally I was like, what is this? I had some experience with video games back in the day, but when we had kids I kind of set them to the side and didn't play because we didn't want our kids to grow up playing video games all the time. So I just kind of stopped playing and then I'd play Madden with them. So I started worrying. I was saying, what if this game is like a Grand Theft Auto, where there's something horrible going on and that's really not made for kids, and I was like, I'll go play it, honey. I'll go find out what it is. So I played it a couple times, and my kids kind of tell me how it works, and I'm playing a couple times and I look up and all of a sudden I've been playing for 30 to 45 minutes. I'm like, okay, this is pretty awesome. Then I started playing it a little bit more and just playing it here or there with my son, and then, all of a sudden, Jeff Kavanaugh at the station starts playing and kind of talking to me about it. And Shippy, Jonathan Shipman, plays in KT, Kevin Turner, plays in the K. I live in Salina, these guys live near downtown Dallas, and here's a way for us to bond and hang out, and it's almost like playing golf, except I hate golf. So here's a way to go spend a couple hours together, go have some fun, compete at something, and then you kind of bond over that. I bonded with my kids, bonded with workers, and I thought, what a cool way to bond with listeners, so we would just throw it out there and say, hey, you want to come and play Fortnite? Come join us. So here I am looking like a dork with the headset on. My wife's looking at me like, oh my god, what have I done? Meanwhile, I'm bonding with listeners and my teammates and my kids, and it became so much fun. It's kind of hard to explain unless you've played and kind of know how it works. It's a really awesome way to just have fun and have fun with 3 other people at the same time. It ended up being just an absolute blast. The more you play, the more you realize, man, I don't want to be a liability for my team, so you know, hey, I've got to get better. I've got to get better, over time. For me, being a washed-up video game player, I didn't play first-person shooting games really, so I skipped a decade, so it's taken longer for me to get better. But I'm finally seeing some little improvements. That game is addictive and awesome. Who are the best professional athletes you've played against so far? Rogers, 2 of them that I've played with that I think are very good are Joey Gallo and Ronald Guzman. I think they're both very good. The one who I'm dying to play with who's supposed to be really, really good is Jadobia Woozy. I really want to play with Cheeto. He talks a lot of trash and he sounds like he's really, really good. So yeah, I got to play with both Gallo and Guzman one night and it was really cool just to listen to them. They're super polite to me and the others that they didn't know that well, but they just give each other so much grief. It's hilarious. Like, highly critical of each other. Their decisions, their shots, what they were doing, it was a lot of fun. But they were both really, really good. Who is your favorite all-time DFW athlete? Rogers, I think I'd have to say Dirk Nowitzki. I could say Tony Romo. I've kind of gotten to know Romo a little bit, and I think one of the most underappreciated athletes in the history of sports. I love Josh Hamilton. Josh is just, he is Roy Hobbs. He's the real deal. He's the living embodiment of Roy Hobbs' character, but he's flawed in his own ways. But I think I would go with Dirk. You know the other guy who would be in the conversation, Michael Young. I never appreciated him enough as a player because at the end of his career he struggled a little bit. But getting to know him after sports, he's one of the most impressive people I've ever met, period. In any capacity. But I think my overall, all-time favorite is Dirk. I don't think athletes are role models, but I think if you find somebody within athletics that is doing something that you can use as a teaching point, then I think sure, they could be a role model, and Dirk is that. Dirk is a guy who works endlessly to get everything he's gotten. He's not a guy that just showed up and said, "Here's all my natural ability, where's my ring?" He is a humble, hard-working superstar. A selfless player who would do anything to help his team. He's given himself so many pay cuts over the years to help with the NBA cap to get the Mavs a better chance at having a better support system around him. He sacrificed millions of dollars repeatedly. Then we got to watch in the 2011 finals because the Mavs wanted Skin to be on the TV broadcast. They wanted to take our radio show with us everywhere we went, so I got to go. I was kind of like Skin's suitcase. To bring Skin on the TV broadcast, you had to let us go and find a place to do our radio show, so we went to every single road game in 2011 in the finals. Every home game and road game. When we were on the road, we were team plane, team bus, team hotel. We were embedded with the Mavericks. So I got to see firsthand how hard Dirk worked. He would come back to the hotel in between games, after practice rather. The whole team would practice, then they'd come back to the hotel, and then after that, they're kind of free to go watch a movie, go on a date, go to dinner, wherever they'd like. Well, Dirk was always back in the lobby like 2 hours after the first practice ended in all new gear with his own coach to go work out for another 3 hours. But I got to see how hard he worked. Earlier, we got to go to LA to cover Dirk in an all-star game. This is one of my favorite Dirk stories. I think he'd been going to LA to play the Clippers and Lakers for 12 years at that point or something, multiple times per year going to LA. Skin and I got sent out there to cover Dirk. So we're really the only people out there locally from DFW. We're sitting there hanging out with Dirk, and we're in his locker room and we're like, "Hey, dude, we're in LA. We've got a hall pass. We're out and about. Where should Skin and I go? What are the restaurants? What are the clubs? What do we need to do while we're here? You've been coming here for a decade. What should we do?" He looked at us in all seriousness and goes, and we're pretty good friends at that point, he goes, "There's a movie theater across from the hotel.